morning, my fellow treasure hunters and explorers. I just got back from a fun adventure. I was gone for a week. We went up to the Moon Lake gathering and stopped at a few places along the way to further some research in these areas. I enjoyed the Moon Lake gathering this year. The weather was nice and the speakers were great. I really enjoyed learning some new things about the KGC. I really enjoyed Robert Kreider's information on Bigfoot. It was very well presented, and there was a lot of information and details that I think a lot of in the past about Bigfoot that I hadn't heard before. And I would have liked to have seen some of his evidence in the photographs, but the lighting and stuff was such that it was very difficult to see things on the screen, the projector outdoors. I guess one takeaway is they could have this afternoon session inside like the Altamont High School auditorium or something like that if they could get access to that venue, because all the speakers want to use PowerPoint or video or photographs and it's really hard to see outside early before it gets dark. I think that would really help the presenters. Anyways, good. It was a fun time, met a lot of good people, made some new friends, met some subscribers, some of you out there, and also some supporters, and so really grateful to meet these great people and shake your hand and look you in the eye and share some information. Anyway, it was a worthwhile event. I really enjoyed hearing from Terry Carter this year. I mean, that's what I want to hear is new information from new people, and Terry spoke and I felt like he did a great job. He talked about his experiences and Brewer's Cave and a little bit about the mystery glyphs, and I'd really like to hear. Terry does a great job of interviewing treasure hunters and their stories and experiences, but he's a wealth of knowledge. I'd like to hear more about Terry's experiences and knowledge. So anyway, it was a good time. A humorous note, I was exchanging information with Robert Kreider. I wanted to give him some Bigfoot information that I have, and he was busy putting away his castings of Bigfoot tracks and doing things, and so his girlfriend Tara May was giving me his information, and I was giving her my information for Robert, and she handed me her phone to put his phone number and information in there. It said Robert Lovebug or something like that on there for the last name. I said, is his last name Lovebug? And then I caught myself. I realized it was her pet name, and she blushed. It was really funny. And so I just handed her the phone, and I said, here. And she put his information in my phone. It was kind of funny. Anyway, good speakers, good times, and appreciate the effort that went into the gathering. I know it's a lot of work. It brings together a lot of great people, and you're able to meet new treasure hunters and new individuals that you share things in common with. And not only that, but we were able to work on some of our projects up there in that area and further some information, find some new areas to explore. I found a couple of new caves that we need to look at, a couple of new mines, old mines but new to me. And so it was time well spent for me, and I went up there with John and his girlfriend, and we had a good time. Along our way up there, we stopped at the Henry Mountains and spent a couple days there looking at my project in the underground city information. I'm further convinced that this location that I'm looking at is indeed some kind of an underground structure, probably a mine that was mined out in a sandstone formation, which in and of itself is very unusual, but not unheard of. In Australia, they find gold in sandstone. In Silver Reef in southern Utah, they found silver in sandstone. I know in New Mexico, they also found silver in sandstone, and so it might be rare, but it isn't unheard of. So in the Henrys, I think in this formation, as the Aztec or the civilization that mined out that structure originally, I do not think it was the Spanish. I think that the Spanish came in later, gained information from the natives through nefarious means, probably either through torture or persuasion, and I think the Spanish reopened up the workings, and I believe that that is where the Josephine mine originated. I also checked on some mine tailings higher up on the mountain that is in this very same vicinity that Dan Lowe is interested in, and I confirmed that these were indeed mine tailings, ancient mine tailings that were covered with cedar trees that were several hundred years old. The oldest trees there were 200 or 300 years old. And so once the mining was done and people went away, it would have taken a period of time for the trees to start to grow, and then it would have taken several hundred years for those trees to cover up the mine tailings and to mature. So we are in the right area. It's a gold mining district. There's a lot of evidence of old mining, new mining, and of ancient mining. I was able to confirm some of my previous research. I was able to share some of that with my friend John and his girlfriend who was there. John's girlfriend, Leah, also found or identified, I guess we were looking at a pile of rocks, and John had said this looks like a grave, which indeed it did. It had a stick or a old stick or part of a tree that was at the head of the grave, and a pile of stones about 6 feet long at the foot. And then there was a cross piece that looked like it had fallen off that looked like it was a cross above the grave. While we were looking at that, Leah said, well, this looks like a turtle. And as we got looking at the rock pile down below, indeed it did look like a turtle. It was about 4.5 feet tall, probably 8 feet in diameter. It had 4 legs, it had a tail, and it had a head. A very distinctive head that would have taken about 3 or 4 men to carry into the area. Along the ridge above the turtle there was a old trail that was made in the fashion in which the Spanish make trails, and that is they line them with rocks, and then they move these rocks out of the trail for their animals, and then they use the trail. The more modern white man, and the earlier explorers, they didn't do that type of work. They would just stumble through the rocks. In my experience, the Spanish were looking ahead. They were looking at a long-term presence, and they also had slaves, and so they would do this work to prevent injury to the horses and to expedite their travels along these trails. And so all along that ridge you could see this line of rocks alongside the trail. We noticed that every 133 feet up and down all the ridges there were test pits, whether those were dug by the Spanish or by more modern 49ers. We need more information, more research in order to get that information. But of note, it's interesting to note that I metal detected many of these areas. I did not find anything that indicated a more modern 49er excavation. I didn't find rusty nails, I didn't find pieces of metal, I didn't find old cans or any of the things that you find left by the 49ers. It seems to be a very clean, free from modern metals along these test pits and these explorations. And so I'm leaning more towards the Spanish trying to locate the source of the gold as they came upstream. Now I think that the underground city was created as a mine, and that as the gold and the mineral was mined out, it became a large structure, which in sandstone it would be self-supporting, and that the Spanish, as they moved up, as they mined above this area. They used this excavated underground structure as a holding area or a city to house their slaves and their soldiers and employees of the mine. And so this is how I think that this underground city or this underground structure came into existence, and that as it was mined out, it was later used for housing people. This also ties into my research into the earlier histories of the Spanish, of the Portuguese that came here. They had information and maps. Christopher Columbus had information, he had maps that were older than the time period in which he came across in 1492. There had been previous expeditions. These secrets were closely held within the elite or the people that were in the know. And this is what they used to come here to try to find Cibola, to try to find Kapala and these lost ancient cities and their wealth. The map that was on the petroglyph of the Iberian Peninsula that seems to represent Cibola, the 7 cities of Cibola, surprisingly fits very, very closely over this location in the Henry Mountains. It's almost unbelievable. The stone has been carved to look just like the terrain features in the Henry Mountains. It looks like the female genitalia and womb is in this Iberian Peninsula petroglyph, and it fits surprisingly well over this area. The land features, the slope, the entrances, all those things seem to line up perfectly. It's amazing that they could make such an accurate representation so many miles away from the actual location. And so I think they had diagrams or drawings or a map that they took over there, and they made this petroglyph of their earlier visit to this area. And this is one of the things I believe that Columbus and the other explorers used in their search for Cibola, Kapala, or their cities of gold. One of the things that we meant to do or wanted to do was to check for tunnels and voids. We had a deep seeker, but the temperatures were very warm, and because of that, this particular deep seeker doesn't function well in warm temperatures. And so we're going to return to this area in the fall with some equipment that will absolutely tell us some GPR and some of these deep seeking detectors, and we're going to have an extensive, we're going to do extensive research of that area and find the tunnel that leads into this structure. And I have no doubt that we will figure this out. And so it's exciting, and we were able to narrow down some information and find some new areas for further research while we were there. Now, as we progressed northward towards the Uintas, we camped in the Moon Lake region, Moon Lake area, and we were able to find some new caves, some new mines, and when we get the new drone, which is going to be here in a couple of weeks, we will be able to do extensive research that would take us days or weeks on foot before we commit to actually going and exploring some of these things. That will save us hours and a lot of increase the safety of going into some of these areas and being able to plan the safest route, or to see if it's worth even going into the areas. We can look for petroglyphs, we can make sure that the openings are not superficial, and we can see if there's any mineral or tailing piles which will say the Spanish were here or there was other human presence in the area. It's very beautiful. One thing I must say is, while camping, the deer flies this year were very frisky. It was pretty rough trying to keep them off of us during the daytime. And then as night closed in, the mosquitoes came out and the deer flies went to bed. So all the water and moisture from this last winter has brought the bugs out in full force. We did see a lot of elk, a lot of deer, so it's going to be a great year for wildlife, and it's really nice to see the streams flowing full, the lakes. Moon Lake was brimming. Stillwater Reservoir was as full as I've ever seen it. It ran over the spillway earlier this year. It was down to about 8,100 feet when we were there, so it's at its high pool marker for boaters, and they still have the gate closed, so it'll probably be opened for boating or kayaking or whatever they allow in a few weeks. Anyway, it was a good time, and I'm going to show some pictures and some video from our experiences while we were there. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, share the video. It really helps us to be able to put out more content. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Comes John and Leah. Welcome home! Welcome home! This is your home for the night.
This is our
Airbnb.
Our vacation rental?
Yeah,
It's
pretty cool.
For this? Wow.
Pretty cool old building. I'm like amazed it's still standing.
This one's a little more modern.
This is a little more modern.
It's got plastic on the roof, so
old hole or mine or something.
Yeah.
Tunnel dug through into there. In fact, it looks like you. I don't know. Kind of weird. That's the best part of the trail up here is coming up through there. Leah's been the camera person.
Yeah,
I don't want
to watch it. You probably won't see.
I'll Pack rats like these old cabins. This is kind of a cool one.